Welcome, everyone. On behalf of the Education in Crisis and Conflict Network, I am so happy to welcome you to today's webinar, Early Childhood Development and Social Cohesion, part of the Education in Crisis and Conflict Network Learning Series. Our learning series is meant to help members access, apply, and share evidence, resources, and tools related to topics drawn from USAID's Education in Crisis and Conflict Learning agenda. My name is Kate Lapham, and I am the Learning Network Lead for ECCN. The 2018 education policy expanded the scope of USAID's education programming to include pre-primary education and child well-being, vital components of effective, holistic early childhood development. I am so excited to hear about the important work our members have been doing in this space in contexts affected by crisis and conflict. While we are presenting in English, live interpretation is available in French and Spanish. To access the French or Spanish channel, please select the corresponding channel from the interpretation menu at the bottom or top of your Zoom screen. If you have any questions about Zoom functionality, please send a private message to ECCN by searching the participant list. This is a reminder that we are recording this session. It will be available on the Leading Through Learning Global Platform YouTube channel after the event. Before we dive in, I have a few reminders for you. First, closed captioning is available in English. To access this, click on the CC icon at the bottom or top of your screen. Second, we invite you to post questions or comments in the chat as you are listening. We will monitor the chat for questions as we go. Third, please make sure that you are muted and that your camera is off to preserve bandwidth. And finally, remember that we are recording this and it will be shared publicly after the event. The Education in Crisis and Conflict Network and the LAC Hub are part of the USAID Leading Through Learning Global Platform, which includes two other global learning networks, the Higher Education Learning Network, or HELEN, and the Global Reading Network, GRN, as well as LTLGP regional representatives in Africa and in the Latin America and Caribbean region. We hope that in addition to staying tuned to ECCN, you will be interested in collaboration across the platform. If you are not already a member, you can register now to receive invitations to future events for all of the networks and chapters, as well as other opportunities to convene with fellow members and engage. Now I will turn over to our partners from Sesame Workshop. Carolina, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carolina Casas, Vice President of International Education for Sesame Workshop. Welcome to the second webinar of our ECT and Social Cohesion Learning Cohort. We come together today with a shared understanding that young children have a vital place in efforts to build stable, peaceful, and cohesive societies. As we discussed during our last meeting, we know that social cohesion is both a condition for safe, inclusive, and harmonious learning environments, which are required for children's healthy development, learning, and protection, and a goal that can be addressed through early learning, since the skills for furthering equity and inclusion, resisting bias and prejudice, and strengthening the social fabric of communities must be nurtured from the beginning of life. We also know that promoting social cohesion at the early childhood level through the meaningful engagement of adults in children's learning environments has the potential to have ripple effects in communities at large. It's because of this shared conviction and the hope that these connections can be explored and strengthened that we have partnered with USAID's Education in Crisis and Conflict Network, which is part of the Leading Through Learning Global Platform, to convene a global cohort of researchers, practitioners, and decision makers that can help us understand the contours of this emerging field and lay out a shared path forward. Work in the space of social cohesion has been a fundamental component of much of Sesame Workshop's educational efforts around the world. For almost 4 decades, our initiatives in conflict and post-conflict settings, such as Israel, Palestine, Kosovo, and Northern Ireland, have offered child-centric strategies for dealing with interpersonal and societal conflicts, and developing respect and understanding for similarities and differences, with measurable impact on children's pro-social skills and dispositions. More recently, our organization has undertaken an effort to update and build upon this rich history through our Coming Together initiative in the United States that addresses racial justice, and through international programming focused on inclusion and belonging in Iraq, Colombia, and Uganda. While delivering high-quality mass media and direct services, we're also hoping to contribute to building a robust technical foundation for this line of programming, which is why our organization is so excited to partner with all of you in this venture. As a reminder, during these 3 webinars, we hope to provide a convening space for researchers, practitioners, and decision makers working in the space of early childhood development and social cohesion to document and expand the field that is emerging at this intersection. And we will take the first step to synthesize these discussions and findings in an annotated compendium from the webinar series and the information you have kindly shared with us through the survey. As we discussed in August, here's the timeline for our work together. It's great to see so many of you continuing with us, and we hope that you will join us again in our 3rd and final webinar on November 1st, and we look forward to sharing the annotated compendium in January with you. We have framed the design of the cohort around 3 sets of driving questions. First, how do strategies and outcomes related to early childhood care and development and to social cohesion support one another? Are there relevant theories of change that reflect these relationships? Second, what do successful programming and interventions look like in this space, which is the question that brings us together today? And finally, what evidence do we have about the linkages between ECCD and social cohesion? Is this evidence reflective of crisis and conflict settings? What critical questions are unanswered? In line with our driving questions, the webinars focus on those 3 main themes: theories of change, promising practices and programming, and evidence and approaches to measurement. In our first event on August 1st, we heard presentations from Ayman Taha, Senior Education Advisor at Sesame Workshop, presenting the Ahlam Simsim Iraq program, Kelsey Dalrymple, Education in Emergencies practitioner, currently based in Tanzania, and Nafisa Shekova, Global Lead for Education and ECT with the Aga Khan Foundation, based in Geneva. I will highlight 2 key takeaways from their rich presentations. First, while social cohesion is not always an explicit goal built into theories of change at the start of ECD programming, many of our presenters observed behaviors related to social cohesion as byproducts of programming focused on outcomes such as social emotional learning, positive self-concept, self-management, pluralism, and ethics. Second, there are often existing cultural values and approaches around social cohesion that exist in the places where we work. And when grants allow us the timelines and funding to do so in-depth research to uncover and build on those values, it allows for the possibility of deeper impact. We will be happy to answer any questions related to the future work of the cohort and the timeline in our Q&A function or via email. But in the interest of time, please let me hand over the mic to my colleague Shana Khan so we can get started on today's exciting presentations.
Thank you so much, Carolina. Hi, everyone. My name is Shana Cohn. I'm Director of International Education at Sesame Workshop. Happy to be with you here today. As you listen to the following presentations, please keep an ear out for common themes and promising practices around the link between ECD programming and social cohesion outcomes. Please also use the Jamboard, which we'll put in the chat, to document any questions for our presenters, and I'll keep an eye on those and kind of gather themes and relevant groups of questions for our discussion at the end of the webinar. Now, I'm pleased to pass the mic to our first presenters, Nicole Roger and Asma Al-Khatib. Over to you.
Thanks so much for this opportunity to share examples and lessons learned from Plan International. As Shana mentioned, my name is Nicole. I'm the Global Policy and Advocacy Lead for Early Childhood Development in Plan International, calling in from Melbourne, Australia. I'm joined here by my colleague Asma, who is Senior Program Manager for Plan International Jordan, calling in from Amman. Today, Asma and I are going to share with you 3 short examples, as well as some key recommendations based on Plan's work around the world, exploring different entry points for our peace and social cohesion work in our early childhood development programs. As you can see from the map, we will be visiting projects in Myanmar, Jordan, and Uganda. Plan is increasingly focusing on how to ensure ECD programs are conflict sensitive and leverage opportunities to promote peace and social cohesion. This is because we recognise the particular vulnerability of the youngest children growing up in conflict-affected settings and the potential risk of long-term negative impacts on their development, health and well-being. There are an increasing proportion of countries in which Plan is implementing ECD programs that are affected by rapid onset emergencies or protracted crises, including those caused by food insecurity, conflict, climate change, and health pandemics. Our work is being informed by experience on the ground and also by insights and recommendations from a review conducted by and for Plan with the support of International Alert, a leading peacebuilding organisation. This included a scoping review of relevant literature and key informer interviews with external experts and with Plan teams from different countries. But before we describe our work in more detail, we'd like you all to complete a quick poll. What entry points are you using in your ECD programming work to promote social cohesion and peace? So I think the poll should be appearing here. So yeah, please just answer. It's a multiple choice. You can, for your current work in ECD programming, are you using parenting programs, early learning or community engagement initiatives or other as entry points for your social cohesion work? So just take a quick moment just to submit your answer and we'll have a look at the results. So if you submit your answer, we should be able to see the poll results. Okay, so very interesting. So all of these aspects of the ECD work are potential entry points for promoting peace and social cohesion, but we can see that early learning and learning through play programs are one of the key ways that we're doing this work. So thank you, that's very interesting. So first, in terms of Plan's experience, I'll go to Myanmar. So Plan International Myanmar implemented an early childhood development in emergencies project between 2018 and 2022 to support development and well-being of children 0 to 8 in central Rakhine State, which has experienced ongoing armed conflict. The project included a focus on parenting in emergencies to help support parents and their children in humanitarian contexts and work to improve the knowledge, attitudes and practices that support holistic development of girls and boys. The project reached more than 3,100 women, men, girls and boys through activities including establishment of early learning centres and playgroups, formation of mothers and fathers groups, and delivery of a parenting in emergencies curriculum. The parenting sessions offered a range of topics on issues such as stress management, child needs, co-parenting, conflict resolution, and different support strategies to help children be happy, healthy, smart, and strong. From the Myanmar experience, there are good practice principles identified for parenting programs promoting nurturing care that are of key importance when working with conflict-affected children and families and for the promotion of social cohesion, including the importance of emphasising responsiveness, play, non-violent discipline and protection, recognising that positive caregiver interactions and responsive care help to lay the foundations for children's development of skills essential for peace building, including sharing, cooperating and resolving conflict. Taking a whole family approach, recognising that stress, distress and trauma often affects all family members and therefore their ability to provide support for child development and learning. The well-being of children is inseparable from the health and relationships of their most proximal adults. This means that peace-building and social cohesion is interconnected with the health and well-being of these adults and their ability to manage their own stress, strengthen coping and problem-solving skills. This also necessitates looking beyond parenting practices to integrate activities to strengthen skills for coping and stress management and building linkages to other programs or services to meet basic needs. Promoting men's engagement in the nurturing care and protection of their children, strengthen couple relationships and non-violent conflict resolution, recognising that creation of a safe space in families at the micro level can ripple outwards and help subvert cycles of violence at the macro level. And then also ensuring that parenting programs focus on shared problem solving and learning, and on promoting mutual support and solidarity amongst members, including amongst different communities and groups, as a key entry point for promoting social cohesion. And so recent evaluations of ECD work in Myanmar received overwhelming feedback that people improved their ability to solve issues non-violently, and there was improved communication between family members and with the wider community. For example, focus group discussions, key informant interviews, and most significant change stories found many community members who had participated in the project reporting less fighting in their household and a greater propensity to solve issues non-violently since the planned project activities. Survey responses in another evaluation were collected at baseline and endline, although there was no comparison group. A combination of phone surveys and in-person interviews was done. The baseline and first endline survey were conducted by phone due to safety and security concerns, and a second endline survey conducted approximately 4 months after the first and was done in person. Over 90% of respondents positively associated the parenting program with improved community trust and growth of support networks. These findings suggested improved household harmony and overall well-being, as well as enhanced conflict resolution linked to engagement in the parenting program. These changes are important for enhancing social cohesion and peace in families and communities. More broadly, Plan's Parenting in Emergencies approach and curriculum has been implemented in a range of different countries and contexts, including Burkina Faso, Mali, Rwanda, and Uganda, and so additional evidence and lessons learned are being gathered. Given the complex nature of crisis and conflict, and often limited direct access to communities, we recognise the need for flexible approaches to supporting parents of children in ECD programs in order to actively contribute to increasing social cohesion within their communities. Plan is also developing, testing and evaluating a hybrid approach to parenting, which includes digital media-enabled content, combined with face-to-face content, including in Myanmar. These different delivery models are being compared in terms of what works well or less well for remote delivery and how parent-level outcomes compare. More investigation is needed in terms of the short and long-term impacts on social cohesion, recognising that academic literature notes that more on-the-ground insights are needed in conflict-affected settings. So next, I would like to hand over to my colleague Asma to share the experience from Jordan.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you very much, Nicole. My name is Asma, and I am a senior program manager at Plan International Jordan. Jordan currently hosts more than 700 refugees, mostly from Syria, alongside large groups from Iraq, Yemen, Sudan, and Somalia. More than 80% of refugees live outside of camp setting in poor urban and rural areas. In 2016, the government of Jordan launched its 10-year strategy of human resources development, which includes ECD as a critical component. The government of Jordan also committed to universalize kindergarten to provide every child with access to early education. However, there is a limited availability of KGs with low enrollment rates throughout the country, especially among non-Jordanian children. In addition to lack of financial resources to expand the KGs and ECD services in general, including both refugee and host communities. In response, since 2022, Plan Jordan has been implemented the HEROES project. The project focuses on ensuring 5 to 6 years old children from refugee and host communities have increased access to and an improved quality of learning in kindergarten. Therefore, be ready to transition into primary school. The project has expanded access to quality early education in 4 targeted governorates: Amman, Irbid, Zarqa, and Mafraq, by establishing 7 new kindergarten spaces and supporting 6 existing kindergarten spaces in community-based organization. The project also supported 20 classes of school readiness program and has reached more than 750 children, parents, and teachers in the first year. In terms of early learning program, there are some good practice principles emerging in Jordan that are important when working with conflict-affected children and for promoting social cohesion within communities. For example, the early learning programs should provide structure and stability, focusing on social emotional learning and psychosocial well-being rather than only academic learning. Also, early learning program should be facilitated by adults who are responsive, nurturing, create a sense of safety and security, who are trained to ensure positive behavior management and know how to identify and respond to children showing signs of distress, who role model positive and equitable relationship, including between gender, and nonviolent conflict resolution. In Jordan, facilitators are trained to focus on supporting psychosocial skills in children like confidence, relationship building, communication, expressing and understanding emotion and empathy. Play can be leveraged as a tool of peace and promoting social cohesion by building key social skills such as cooperating, taking turns and sharing, understanding other people's needs, thoughts, and feelings. Developmentally appropriate approach and tools are needed to support young children to understand different points of view, other people's needs and feeling, and to promote empathy. Using different play-based approaches that allow children to engage with the voices and lived experience of other groups, in particular marginalized groups, preventing children from learning prejudice and discrimination from the youngest age, and also ways to teach conflict resolution skills. Awareness of and challenge the hidden curriculum. This is the lessons that children learn about norms, values, and beliefs, for instance, related to gender, which reinforce rather than challenge discrimination and unequal power dynamic, and which can be a barrier to social cohesion. The hidden curriculum can be present in classroom management, interaction, materials, and routine. To overcome the challenges presented by hidden curriculum, awareness raising has been done with the facilitator about the need to provide inclusive care and learning for children in all the diversity in a way that promote positive, equitable relationship, and how hidden curriculum can negatively impact children, expectation, belief, and social practices. To date, there is a qualitative and quantitative evidence suggesting improved knowledge, skills, communication, and social cohesion for a project participant. particularly for Syrian children who are now able to access KG and the school readiness program and their parents' caregiver. Plan Jordan want to expand the program to other areas in the country given the high need. Next, I would like to hand over to my colleague Nicole to share the experience from Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Asma. So I'm just conscious of time. So I just want to very briefly mention the Uganda program, where Plan International Uganda works with refugee children in plan-supported early learning centres who display challenging behaviours that can make achieving social cohesion difficult, including aggression, withdrawal, regressive behaviour, and disruptive classroom behaviours related to loss of homes, family members, and a sense of safety and community. And so in those contexts, children in refugee camps are brought together and expected to thrive, which can be challenging given that context. The reality is that many children face stress and disadvantage and consequently drop out of ECE centres. So just to briefly mention that in response, Plan International Uganda began implementing the Team Up approach, which was developed by Save the Children, War Child and UNICEF, aiming to support children to develop a positive outlook, social skills and emotional well-being, including empathy, conflict resolution and problem solving, and to improve relationships with peers and adults, which can increase social cohesion. The project implementation by Plan in Uganda is quite new, but the interesting thing about it is that it's implemented in 2 districts and it targets children aged 3 to 12, and Plan Uganda has developed the child-to-child approach, believing that children will learn from and relate better to other children who have been through or are going through similar experiences. So the project is play-based and child champions are trained on how to deliver particular games and activities with other children. They are selected by teachers and school and community leaders and mentored and supported by trained ECD caregivers. So the project is aiming to reach around 15,000 children through plan-supported EC early childhood education centres. 60 child peer leaders are being trained to do this child-to-child work. But in the interest of time, I'm going to now hand back over to Asma to wrap up Plan's presentations, and we'd be happy to share with you some more information about the Uganda project at a future webinar. The slides will also be available. So thank you, Asma. Just handing back over to you for the 3 groups of recommendations.
Thank you, Nicole. 3 key groups of recommendation emerged from Plan review of our ECD programming with international alert, which you can see on this slide. Owing to the limited of time, we only looked briefly at recommendation 1. Consideration those key entry points for ECD and social cohesion work, parenting, early learning, and community-based approaches and experiences in Myanmar, Jordan, and Uganda. However, just to mention 2 other recommendations, the second one is that all of our ECD work on the ground needs to be informed by local level conflict analysis that considers, for example, relation and the perspective of different communities, both toward each other and toward ECD actors, and all targeting and communications need to be reviewed with conflict lens, considering the needs for clear, transparent targeting of children and communication about how this is done to avoid communities or families feeling that they were unjustly overlooked. The third one is that training and resourcing for staff and parents is crucial, including on conflict resolution, diversity, and gender equality, and that recruitment of staff from affected communities should be prioritized and supported. For Plan, we are on journey. And no doubt there will be bumps on the road to ensure that our ECD program are conflict sensitive and contribute to peace and social cohesion. We are building on strong awareness internally of the need of conflict sensitivity, appropriation of a range of different stakeholders relevant to children's rights, and the needs of ECD, including parents and caregivers for all gender, community and religious leaders, teachers and educators, and the close attention to different needs of vulnerable groups, for example, women and girls, children with disability, children with ethnic majority groups, as well as commitment to gender transformative approach. Thank you for listening and for the opportunity to share our experience and learning to date. And we are looking forward to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Asma and Nicole. That was wonderful. A really great overview of both multiple contexts and multiple entry points for this work. I'm going to pass now to Julie Greer-Villate, who will give our next presentation. And just a reminder to keep putting those questions in the Jamboard, and we'll have a group discussion at the end of these three presentations. Over to you, Julie.
Thanks, Shauna, and hello, everyone. I'm Julie Greer-Villate, and I am a Foreign Service Officer with USAID, currently serving as the Office Director for Education, Youth, and Child Development at USAID Uganda. The case study I am presenting today, ECD as an investment in citizen security in El Salvador, is an activity that I managed and advocated for during my tour with USAID in El Salvador from 2016 to 2020. Next slide. El Salvador is a small, lower middle income country in Central America with a population of around 6 million people. Much of its modern history has been marked by periods of extreme violence. A genocide in the 1920s and 1930s exterminated or expelled most of El Salvador's indigenous and African descended population. A low-level conflict between workers' groups and the Salvadoran elite simmered through the 1960s and 70s before becoming a 12-year civil war from 1980 to 1992. And post-war peace was marred by the importation of violent gangs as Salvadorans were deported from the US to El Salvador, including members of Mara Salvatrucha, or MS-13, and Barrio 18, both of which started in Los Angeles in the 1980s. Next slide. By the time this activity launched in 2018, the gangs were well entrenched across El Salvador, and turf wars, extortions gone wrong, and other gang-related violence resulted in the highest murder rate in the world. At one point, the country averaged more than 100 murders per day. Gang involvement of various types and levels of willingness was pervasive in lower income neighborhoods, which make up the majority of El Salvador. Grooming for gang membership starts as young as 4 years old, with very young children being taught to skip the numbers of rival gangs when they learn to count, as well as being plied with candy and small toys before gradually being recruited into being lookouts and messengers between ages 6 and 8. Contributing to this are frequently poor parental supervision and caregiving practices. El Salvador is a lower middle income country, but most of its wealth is highly concentrated. Much of its middle class migrates to Europe and the United States, and the majority of the population hover around the poverty line. Parents work long hours in factories, farms, markets, or wealthier households, leaving their children with grandparents, neighbors, and for those who cannot afford any other option, publicly run early childhood centers, or ECCs. Data from the period of this activity showed high numbers of single caregiver homes and homes where a grandparent was the caregiver, due in large part to migration. Seeing no viable economic pathways in El Salvador or fleeing gang violence, many parents left El Salvador to attempt to enter the United States, often leaving children behind. El Salvador also lacked a culture of playing with children. Home studies conducted in the early 2010s showed that less than 10% of fathers would get down on the floor and play with their 0 to 5-year-old children, and fewer than 25% of mothers would do the same. Children were generally expected to occupy each other or help adults. So my office, Democratic Governance and Security, decided to make a long-term, large-scale investment in addressing the citizen security, social cohesion, and migration issues by funding a nationwide early childhood development activity to break the cycles of poverty, gang involvement, and irregular migration, and to increase social cohesion in these neighborhoods. This activity trained caregivers and child protection actors at all levels in developmentally supportive childcare. Next slide. The activity was intended to address the entire child protection system in El Salvador, focusing on government-run early childhood care centers and on the 100 or so remaining residential care centers across the country. We started here because these generally served children from the poorest households in the highest violence areas, so the areas of most need. More than 16,000 children in these centers were the indirect or ultimate target population, and the direct participants were all levels of caregivers and child protection actors throughout the Salvadoran system. Participants received leveled training on child protection, ECCD, and child care management best practices, designed to both match their job level and the skills they would most need, and ensure that top-level officials understood the model, the evidence, and what they should be looking for when visiting a center or speaking to a parliamentarian or a political leader. Additionally, the course was specifically designed for lower resource settings to ensure that what was being taught would be achievable in the context. This was reflected in the name of the training even, Best Practices in Limited Resource Childcare Settings. The top level training was a university certificate program for higher level government policymakers, consisting of 1 full day of courses each week for 5 months. Center administrators received 1 day of courses each week for 8 months. And the caregiver training at the closest to the ground level, this took place once a month for 9 months and was complemented by many additional days of hands-on assistance, implementing the skills and concepts learned in the training sessions. Just before COVID, the government of El Salvador was interested in expanding further, as they intended to make pre-primary education compulsory to improve school readiness and long-term developmental and other outcomes for all children and their communities to include social cohesion. Next slide, this slide. The activity did not just rely on output indicators or implied outcomes. It used standardized child development and caregiver capacity assessment tools adapted to the Salvadoran context to provide quantitative as well as qualitative data. The tools included the Battelle inventory to measure change in children's development and the caregiver-child social, emotional, and relationship rating scale to measure observable changes in caregiving practices. Data from these tools allowed for statistical analysis and measuring for significant change over time. At the beginning of the activity, the child development domain with the strongest scores was motor skills. In contrast, children's baseline weight and height, as well as social and cognitive development, were extremely low. Weight and height below the 10th percentile, social, emotional, and cognitive development below the 50th percentile. By the end, there was a statistically significant increase, with most children being at developmentally expected levels. These improvements make children more resilient in the long run, better able to solve problems constructively rather than violently, and to engage in positive behavior and decision-making. In turn, these skills make them less vulnerable to gang recruitment. Less aggression and more thinking are not generally what gangs look for. And also to irregular migration, since they would have more options in their home communities, which also reinforces social cohesion at home. There is a note here, I think maybe in the Zoom chat as well, that I would love to hear about this group's experiences with other tools, especially standardized tools. So there is an extra slide in the Jamboard after the one for questions, where you can add information about instruments that you've used, where and how. Next slide. Part of what made this a successful and exciting activity was that the government of El Salvador was highly interested in transforming their own child protection and ECD systems. They helped design this activity. They committed to making all of their employees available to participate in the training. And they adapted in the face of many changes because they wanted the model to keep going. These changes included a significant political transition and COVID, yet the activity continued. The model addressed the entire system, top to bottom, at one time, rather than piecemeal, ensuring a comprehensive, shared understanding of ECD standards, approaches, measures, and values for all child protection actors. We purposely included residential care centers as well, recognizing the additional level of need for quality ECD support in institutional care, and seizing the opportunity to help these institutions transition away from permanent institutional care and into family support centers to facilitate reunification or foster placement. Strengthening families to reduce abandonment and abuse contributes to social cohesion by ensuring that from their earliest stages, children receive the care and build the developmental skills they need to be resilient, productive citizens in the future. The model is intentionally low cost to be appropriate to and feasible in the contexts in which it is implemented. So far, this model has only been used in Central America, but the core principles, approaches are informed by global data and could be adapted to other geographies. As a further improvement, there is need to better integrate mental health into the approach. We would recommend starting with age-appropriate psychoeducation for children and adult caregivers, as well as assessment and treatment for the caregivers. Next slide. So everyone wants what works, especially when it is affordable. The takeaways from this activity were not especially novel, but when done purposefully, these things truly work, not just rhetorically or theoretically. Use data and evidence-informed approaches. Listen to the people with whom you want to work and adapt those proven approaches to be appropriate to and feasible in their context. Look at strengths as well as needs, and don't assume that everything has to cost millions of dollars to be done well. And don't be afraid to nag everyone you meet about ECD and why it matters, because it works. It works to build social cohesion and supports development objectives across sectors. Nobel Prize-winning research has demonstrated that there is no better investment for any intended objective, including social cohesion, and this activity reinforced those findings. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. That was really fascinating and a rich case study. And I love those takeaways. Now I'm pleased to pass the mic over to our third presenters, Ellie Haino and Deepu Shakya.
Namaste and greetings from Nepal. I am Education Officer Ellie Haino, representing UNICEF Nepal Country Office and presenting to you our Parenting Education Initiative, through which we have gained excellent results during the past months. My colleague, ECD specialist Deepu Shakya, is here with me to answer any questions you may have after this presentation. So we are in Nepal, a mountainous country with a population of slightly over 30 million. Nepal is graduating from the least developed country category in 2026. Please take a moment and reflect back to your own childhood. What was a moment when you felt very much safe and comfortable? Felt scared or even unhappy? Who were present in that moment? What made you feel this way? Were your needs taken into account? This is how one of our parenting education sessions begins, by reflecting back to one's own memories and experiences to be able to critically think of one's own parenting practices and understand where they stem from. Our aim is to help the caregivers understand that parenting is a set of skills that need to be practiced in order to master. Several harmful parenting practices still exist in Nepal, partly due to lack of knowledge. Especially in the remote areas, information sharing happens within the community from mouth to mouth. Globally, educating caregivers has proven to be highly beneficial in supporting the holistic development of young children. Parenting education is based on nurturing care framework, a framework for helping children survive and thrive to transform human potential, meaning good health, adequate nutrition, safety and security, responsive caregiving, and opportunities for learning. As Nepal is a highly community-driven society, the interventions we conduct in communities need to be designed so that different members of the community are involved and deliver the same key messages. Thus, in our parenting education, we are involving not only teachers and community leaders, but also female community health volunteers and elders along with the parents. This way, we are able to strengthen the shared understanding and practices. In order to learn, we need to be taught by trusted and respected members of the community. UNICEF supported the government of Nepal to revise the National Parenting Education Package. We aim to provide the information using various channels to reach the maximum number of caregivers. We are constantly working to expand the reach through government channels, partner NGOs, and by engaging private sector. Caregivers are to select modules that are relevant to them. There are 5 suggested ones that cover the very basics of ECD and 15 additional ones to be selected based on the interest and need of the caregivers. The parenting education program reaches all across Nepal with a focus on the hardest to reach communities, target population being caregivers of children from conception to age 8. Till now, the face-to-face sessions have reached 50,000 caregivers. Our aim is to repeat the same key messages from several platforms. We conducted revision of the National Parenting Education Package together with the government to ensure to include all key topics. We are approaching the caregivers with the same key messages using multiple channels. Through this package, we are ensuring cross-sectoral approach to parenting and care provision. The revised package includes new topics on, for example, disability inclusion. Also, trusted community members, such as teachers and female community health volunteers, contribute to organizing the sessions. The parenting education package includes trainer's guideline, detailed session plans, and pictorial cards. This package is so comprehensive that with the materials, any literate person is able to conduct the sessions. Every session includes activities, reflections, and a session where the participants reflect their learnings and commitment to change on their parenting practices. The participants not only learn about parenting, but also commit to promoting these best practices among their community and fostering behavioral change in others by sharing what they are learning. It takes a village to raise a child. Thus, parenting and caregiving practices are practiced and they become reality in the behavior and actions of the community members in their everyday lives. Here we can see the summary of the package and the sessions, presenting how we have developed the content from the Nurturing Care Framework, covering 33 modules and each session planned to follow the 5 steps. Each session begins by sharing the local knowledge and best parenting practices related with the topic. The next step is to discuss the problems and existing challenges related to the session topic. This is done mainly through activities. This is then followed by sharing of related information and key messages. Next, the participants get to digest this new information and commit to changing their behavior accordingly. Each session is concluded by reflecting on the learnings of the session together. We conducted a knowledge, attitude, and practices study in 2017, reaching nearly 500 households to understand the benefits of the initiative. Through the study, we reported several promising results. For example, under health, increased knowledge and practice on the importance of personal hygiene, such as washing hands before eating, increased knowledge and practice on antenatal and postnatal care, conducting these visits more often, and increase in knowledge on and practices related with the importance of immunization. Under safety and protection, increased number of births registered. Under stimulation and learning, significant increases in the trend of providing children with homemade toys and fathers reading stories for children before they are put to bed. Here we can see some testimonials from caregivers around Nepal. Parenting education has, for example, contributed positively to the involvement of fathers in caring for their children and influenced the perceptions of caregivers on their children with disabilities. Fathers being more involved in their children's upbringing has various positive effects in the lives of young children. According to research, the involvement may reduce the impact of behavioral challenges in children, enhance learning achievements, and support the holistic well-being of the family. Fathers' involvement increases a sense of togetherhood and belonging within the family, together with a feeling of shared responsibility. Also, caregivers have found it important that during the sessions they get to share their experience with the others and reflect on their parenting practices together. The sessions are planned in a manner that the participants get to share their best practices and challenges, and these are then discussed together. Also, community members often feel like they are one big family. Thus, it's important that they learn about the best practices together and also practice them within the community after the sessions. Due to encouraging results and feedback, we are aiming to continue and widen the reach of this initiative in the years to come. Thank you very much, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have regarding the initiative.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. I want to thank, first of all of our case study presenters for that work. And I just want to begin our discussion by highlighting a few key themes I heard on building social cohesion within ECD programs. The first is that we heard repeatedly about the importance of working with local communities, leaders, and governments in the planning, implementation, and M&E strategies of the program. This community engagement seems to be at the crux of what makes an ECD program impactful in the area of social cohesion, and I would say impactful in general. And it's possible that bringing the community together towards this shared goal is in and of itself contributing to cohesion among adults as well. I think we heard that in your last case study. We also heard about the importance of localizing your approach and meeting people where they are. In this last case study, we heard specifically about existing harmful parenting practices in Nepal, as well as the power of local knowledge, the power of using a think back to your own childhood prompt to engage caregivers. With sensitive topics like identity and cohesion, it's crucial that content be grounded in local realities. And then finally, we heard how important it is to ensure the right staff, partnerships, and organizational project processes are in place to support this work. And I think this is just highlighting again, we heard about that important collaboration with governments in all three of these case studies, which I think is so crucial to sustainability and scale. So I just want to highlight that specifically. And then finally, I didn't have this written down in advance, but I really heard repeatedly of the importance of parental engagement as an entry point for social cohesion, and positive parenting practices as important to this topic. So I'll pause there, and I'll pass to Carolina for a few closing words, and then we'll move on to a larger discussion. Oh no, I'm sorry. First we'll do the larger discussion, then I'll pass to Carolina. So I'm going to turn to the Jamboard now. And one of the first kind of themes I saw in our questions was about, again, these causal links between certain ECD competencies like play-based learning, and how that kind of gets us along the steps that are causal links to social cohesion or peace. So I have two different questions along the same lines for Nicole and Asma, but I think I'd open this to all of our presenters. The first question is, could you elaborate more on how programming in Myanmar contributed to improved social support networks? What made that difference?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I can answer that. So Planned Parenting and Emergency Programs, which is really sort of a flagship program that's being implemented in Myanmar, has a really big focus on building social support networks, and sessions are designed to help parents to develop those support networks for their own well-being. And it's actually one of the program outcomes in the results framework, with a core indicator. So it is really fundamental to the parenting and emergencies work that's been done in Myanmar. And it's something that is, done by bringing, parents and caregivers of all genders together in a non-threatening environment, and building this sense of solidarity and trust among participants, which can be missing, in some communities that have been affected by conflict. So really bringing them into a non-threatening space where they are clearly, all parents love their children, they want the best for their children, and so that's something that people can come together on and then build trust and solidarity in communities, sharing and speaking about the challenges and also the opportunities that's presented by supporting through parenting and supporting their children. So I hope that answers the question. Thanks.
It does. Thank you. Before I go to the next question related to this, I'm just curious if other presenters want to comment on improved social networks as a result of their programming. All right, I'll move to the next, also for you, Nicole. Could you provide an example of how you are connecting play with peace building? What would an activity look like to a participating child?
Sure. I mean, I think Asma might want to also jump in here, and other speakers as well. But I think, things like puppets, storytelling, hands-on activities, arts and crafts, all of these things that are age appropriate and essential for play-based programs and for entertaining and engaging children can all be used also to, create a positive social emotional learning environment, building skills around sharing, conflict, peaceful, conflict resolution, dealing with, challenges amongst children, etc. So I think that, play in its very nature is, it's about problem solving, and it's about, working, playing, spending time with other children. And so, there's lots of different tools. I mean, we've used, like I said, puppet storytelling as some examples. But yeah, just through, I know in Uganda they talked about, in the Uganda example, I didn't have time to talk about it, but a simple game of tug of war was something that was kind of used, with children in the Uganda program, because it's about, it's about teamwork, it's about communication, so those kind of activities can really help, children around, obviously learning through play, but also kind of developing those skills that are needed, for peace and positive communication.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We have a lot of curiosity about these causal links, so I'm just going to move now to Julie for another one. Can you expand on the connection between family cohesion and social cohesion?
Hi, yes. So I started typing there in the Jamboard that there are kind of two things here. One is that this activity was a long-term investment based on data showing that children who have strong beginnings are less vulnerable later in the lifespan to criminal involvement, violence, including interpersonal violence, as well as other forms. And so the idea is that by making this early investment, you're preventing a problem from starting even, and eventually decreasing levels of existing community violence as well. And similarly, they're more prepared to be sort of positively functioning members of their community, which then increases cohesion because they're better able to cooperate, to engage constructively, etc. And then the other aspect of this is that family functioning and community functioning are often linked. And so in places where we see higher levels of community violence and lower levels of social cohesion, this is often reflected as well at the family systems level, where people often experience more interpersonal violence in the homes, or less sort of collaborative, cooperative problem solving as a family. And there are a number of reasons for this, cognitively, socially, etc. But that's sort of the link, that very often what's happening in the home is reflected in what's happening in the community and vice versa. And so by building stronger families, you can often see community level results as well.
Thank you so much, Julie. I think that makes so much sense, kind of intuitively, but to hear how much data is behind that link is really useful and important. Appreciate that. Also, I love what you said about in your presentation around the building of these skills in children and the reduction in aggression and the increase in critical thinking makes children less appealing to people looking to put them in gangs. So that link feels really clear. Any other comments from other presenters on that link? Okay, great. I'm going to move to maybe this is a question for Asma. There are a few questions about whether Jordanian and Syrian children were both in these kindergarten classes or they were separate. And if they were together, what were the benefits and challenges of bringing together these different communities?
Yeah. Thank you for this question. So in our community, we have both Jordanian and Syrians, but our challenges that we have in Jordan, that the limited number of kindergarten and ECD center in general. So in the government, within the Ministry of Education, you cannot find a lot of enrollment for Syrian and Jordanian because it's also limited for Jordanian. So we are trying to use the community-based organization to have both Syrian and Jordanian. We have them both together. We did not separate them. And we have also other nationalities like Yemenis and everyone. All the nationalities, every child has the right to enroll in this programs. So we are trying to make them together. This is part of our program to have a social cohesion, to have building the relationship between each other, and to start thinking of other, and to have the diversity of children and to respect each other. So this is one of the objectives, to have everyone together in these centers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And did you find, just as a follow-up to that, did you find any challenges with bringing those communities together, or did you feel like the program was set up to kind of mitigate those challenges?
In general, with the children, nothing. There is no challenges having the children in the same program and enroll them in the same program. But at certain time and certain point, we have this program with adults, with parents and caregivers, that they feel that, for example, the Jordanian feel that the Syrian have the opportunities that they should have all the services that it cannot be provided for Jordanian for economic situation. But there is a lot of programs in Jordan work in the social cohesion, especially for adult and caregivers, which reflected on the children as well. So in general, having the children, there is no problem with that in the same program.
Thank you. That's really interesting. I think oftentimes at Sesame, at least, we've found predicted challenges or issues that come from adults. When we put children together, they aren't necessarily showing up. They're issues between adults, but at the child level, they don't necessarily exist. Really interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another question for your group, maybe for Nicole. I would love to understand better the connection that is being made between the Uganda program, social cohesion, and being made for the Uganda program between social cohesion and classroom environment.
Okay, so unfortunately, our Uganda colleagues are not here to they'd be best placed to answer that question. But I know that the intervention is conducted, 2 to 3 days per week at the start of the day, and it's part of the daily routine. So I think because it's a child-to-child approach, it's play-based, and it's often, held outside. So it's not, it's part of the EC, the Early Childhood Education Centre, so community-based early learning. So the activities, they might be inside, they might be outside, but they happen at the start of the day and are part of the daily routine. And so the connection between social cohesion and the classroom environment, I think, just having those activities at the start of the day, with the assumption that, that children supporting other children, that peer-to-peer approach is going to work and going to help children, feel more comfortable with each other, and then to kind of go on into the more, the rest of the daily routine, focus more around, the interactions with the caregiver. So kind of starting off, or the facilitator, the educator. So starting off the day, with sort of child-to-child, peer-to-peer approach as a way, to build connections across communities, and then going into the more sort of, well, not formal, but in with the caregivers and educators to continue their routine.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I'll pass now a few questions for Ellie. Could you discuss what has worked in terms of addressing traditional harsh discipline practices in Nepal?
Thank you very much. Happy to let my colleague Deepu also join if he wishes. But maybe to begin with, I think the main thing is that during the parenting education sessions, the caregivers learn different ways of managing these challenging situations. So they get more knowledge and more skills that they are then able to use these in these difficult situations.
And just to add, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for this opportunity to share experience from Nepal. And regarding the change in how caregivers treat their children in terms of violent discipline, in the study we had in 2017, the knowledge attitude and practice study, we found that there were definitely some improvements in practices regarding how children were treated by their caregivers. So in Nepal, the violent discipline is quite high, with around 80% of children being treated with violent discipline. But after the interventions, we found that there was significant decrease in those kind of treatments, for example, like scolding or physical disciplining. So they were utilizing positive disciplining around like how they should be, positively addressing to children's behaviors. So there were significant change which we found after our knowledge attitude and practice study in 2017.
Thank you so much. And then a follow-up, I think important for all program designers, how did you incentivize parents and caregivers to attend multiple sessions? Maybe for Deepa.
So I will respond to that. So we have conducted several stages of parenting education programming, first in the small scale of about like 500 communities, then to 800 communities, and now we are at the national scale. And like at the national scale, it depends according to the implementing partner or implementing organizer, because the current strategy right now is basically we are providing training of trainers, and we are providing limited sessions directly through our implementing partner. And whenever we do the implementation part, and whenever we do the training of the trainers, we strongly push for the fact that this is for their own learning and not for some incentives. So that part, what we have found is like, even if the same package is implemented by another implementing partner, which pushes over incentives or goes for, okay, we need to finish this and we just provide incentives, done. So we have found that there is significant difference on if you are promoting for that caregiver's learning part, or if you are motivating by different kind of incentives, like sometimes they provide a transportation cost, sometimes they provide lunch, and so on. So in UNICEF supported interventions, we never do that. We just provide we just pay facilitation costs to the facilitator only. And parents and caregivers are motivated with the fact that this is for your children. If you are interested, you should come. If you are not interested, you should not. And one flexibility we adapt is that definitely a same caregiver cannot come for multiple sessions for sure. So we say that, okay, from one family, maybe other caregivers can also join. So that's the flexibility we provide. But in terms of incentives, we never provide any kind of incentives so far. And in the CAP study as well, definitely there were suggestions that, okay, there needs to be some incentives and maybe there needs to be some payment to ultra poor, maybe. Yes, that might be something which I think income generation support part as well, that might be needed to look upon. But what we are suggesting to municipalities which we are partnering is that maybe they can link these parenting package with income generation programs they are already doing. So if they can do that, it's automatically connected with income generation and not, hampering the learning of the core learning aspect of the parenting package. So that's the main thing. And I think it's based on the andragogy, adult pedagogy as well, that if you are really motivated for your own learning, then you can continue.
Thank you so much, Deepa. I think that a couple of things I heard from you is the importance of flexibility and allowing for multiple multiple representatives from families, and then just reinforcing the idea that this is self-motivated. This is not for any sort of incentive. I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. A final question for Julie. What evidence do you see is needed to expand the work that was presented to other countries?
Hi, yes, that's a fun question because it's not really a matter of evidence, it's really a matter of funding and having willing in-country partners to help make the work sustainable. So the organization that USAID funded to do that work is exploring other opportunities with USAID, but also directly with host country governments in other parts of the world, including Africa and Asia. So hopefully we'll see more.
Wonderful, thank you. Before I pass to Carolina, I'll just open the floor to our presenters if there are any final reflections or connections you'd like to share between what we heard from the group. Okay. Oh, Ellie?
Yes, just wanted to say thank you. And I think it's very interesting to see the linkages between the programs in different countries. And I think there is so much we could also learn from each other. So hope to see more of learning and sharing in the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I agree. I think this webinar in particular is so rich with connections. All right, so Carolina, I'll pass over to you to close this out.
Thank you, Shana, and thank you to each and every one of our presenters today for such a wonderful and rich discussion. We thank our participants for joining us on today's session, and we thank our panelists for your insights. All the questions and comments have contributed to a very rich discussion. We look forward to welcoming all of you back on November 1st for our final webinar of this series, where we will explore questions around evidence and approaches to measurement. And we once again thank you for joining us. I will hand it over now to Kristen for a few housekeeping notes.
Thank you very much, Carolina. If you have not done so already, please introduce yourself in the Google group by sharing a brief professional bio. You can access this group using the link. Drop it in the chat now. The purpose of this group is for you to share your work, research findings, reports, and other documents you find interesting and want to circulate within this group. Here you can also find materials from webinar session 1. After this event, we will also share the resources from this webinar session as well. Additionally, we'd like you to explore the resource library, peruse the program documents shared by other cohort members. And we encourage you to keep adding any other materials you'd like. We've connected already with our presenters for session 3, and preparation is underway. So we look forward to seeing you again on November 1st for our discussion on evidence and approaches to measurement. Thank you all.